You have not seen what I have seen. What have elves ever done to you? Suppose the words never manage to escape your throat. But for you, I will keep it strong and simple. Stab, twist, gut. Who is this mortal who speaks to me as if he has the slightest idea who I am?
It is only natural to feel conflicted.
Conflicted? There is a tempest in me. It swept me to this island for a reason, and it will not be quelled by you, Regent.
If one truly wishes to understand Amazon's The Rings of Power, you won't achieve this from reading the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. His books and this show have fewer connections than a Pakistani couple's family tree.
Durga.
Also, you need not endure the gauntlet of watching every episode, nor any supplemental material. That much work is entirely unnecessary. I believe it is more than enough to examine a single and specific character arc. So, let us look to the shatterer of icy walls and glass ceilings alike, to the strong and elvish and womanly warrior, scaled down to travel size for your convenience. Come with me, gourds and gals, as I employ a bit of deja voodoo as we, like the dwarves of Moria, dive deeply and greedily into the Season 1 story of Galadriel.
Be on your guard. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
We first meet our main character as a little girl as she fashions herself a paper boat, which she then proceeds to sail down a stream. Her childhood peers, horrified by this witchcraft, then take to stoning the ship as if they found its bowsprit stuck up the backside of a bison. Galadriel tackles the leader of this cadre of kids and rears back for the death blow, but Brother Elf arrives just in time to stop his incensed sister. Seeing this as a teachable moment, Brother Elf imparts upon her the wisdom of their kind by explaining why ships float, but stones do not.
Because the stone sees only downward, but the ship has a secret. Her gaze is not downward, but up. Gaze.
What the f*** are you on about? Fuck are you on about?
Okay, so if ships look up to float, then exactly where do birds look to fly? Maybe you should have said boats look straight ahead, or even provided a metaphor that was actually applicable to her situation. Perhaps we should have warned her about the dangers of floating boats down a stream with incidents like this happening all over the world. Of course, once it's revealed what he whispered to her at the end of this lesson, it's a tad clearer what he meant.
Sometimes we cannot know until we have touched the darkness.
In other words, Galadriel should have killed him. Next, he tries communicating to his sister that he won't always be around to confuse her like this, but ends up exacerbating the problem because the elves don't have a word for death.
That's just maddeningly unhelpful.
You just pulled her destroyed ship out of the water, Chief. Are you sure there's no analogy here?
Yeah!
She's about to get a nasty shock. The elves get pulled into war, and Middle-earth is left in ruin after battle wages for hundreds of years. Well, Eru be praised, because now the elvish vocabulary is awash with many words for death, making the war effort and countless sacrifices worthwhile.
Grammar is the greatest joy in life, don't you find?
Oh yeah, definitely.
The now adult Galadriel even builds a 4 times her height monument to their updated dictionary while barefoot in a dress on a ruinous battlefield. Unfortunately, Brother Elf also went the way of the paper boat, but not before getting marked by Morgoth's bestie, Sauron, which makes sense because nothing is more goth than cutting skin. Now sour on Sauron, Galadriel vows to hunt him down and make him pay, and after hundreds of years of searching, we catch up with her leading a company of elves up a snowy mountain. They find their way into a stronghold of his, which is understandably abandoned due to a lack of heating and air. The elves are attacked by a snow troll, and after watching 6 of her peeps get wrecked, she springs into action, literally, and defeats the monster
In less than 15 seconds!
This would probably look far less comical if they'd cast an elf who didn't look like one of her parents was born in the Shire. What do you think her hobbit name was? Meriadoc Sue, perhaps? Also, this level of skill kind of makes you wonder why Galadriel wasn't fighting with her brother in the war or when he was hunting for Sauron. She must cook a mean limbus loaf. Having found the very same sigil on an anvil which was left upon her brother, she believes this second appearance, hundreds of years later and thousands of miles away, means that Sauron left a trail for his minions. This marks point A, this one point B, and her advice is to just keep heading north. Remember Aragorn needing a leaf of Lorien, the imprints of their bodies, some cut ropes, and a bunch of footprints to find Merry and Pippin? What a waste of time that turned out to be. Galadriel's company, however, doesn't see the genius of her tracking abilities and decides it's high time they went home. Cut over to the elf capital of Lindon, and there we meet L. Ron Hubbard as he writes Battlefield Middle-earth. He and our heroine greet one another, and to be honest, I thought I would add an interesting little factoid here about how Galadriel eventually became Elrond's mother-in-law. But when I asked Google to confirm the nature of their relationship, I received this response.
No, Galadriel is not Elrond's mother-in-law, but rather the mother of Elrond's wife, Celebrian.
Well, I'm glad I didn't make that mistake. They catch up a bit, and she humble brags about dealing with a troll,
In less than 15 seconds!
but then shows him the mark she found out north and asks for an audience with the king. I mean, we went to the Middle East with more evidence of WMDs, so sure, this seems like a reasonable request.
Strategery.
But instead, the High King holds a ceremony which celebrates the return of Galadriel and the Keebler Collective, and their reward is that they get to go back home to Valinor. Valinor is basically heaven for elves, so they're pretty much getting the reward of Canadian healthcare.
I'll do it.
Well done, son. I know that was hard.
That was awesome!
It's also kind of funny that the king looks directly at her when he says, "Today our days of peace begin," right before he ships the woman off.
Bye, Felicia.
As all of Lindon celebrates, Elrond goes to see Galadriel and she informs him of her intentions to refuse the king's gift of euthanasia. And can you blame her? Killing a snow troll
In less than 15...
must be like eating a Lay's potato chip. You can't stop at just one. Elrond tells her he understands why she's conflicting about leaving for eternal paradise and happiness, but she really needs to drop the whole Sauron thing and move on rather than lead other elves to their demise. He even goes as far as offering to take up her task if it proves true that the enemy is still alive. Galadriel, for once, listens to reason and does indeed get on the boat and departs for Valinor Hala.
And there was much rejoicing.
Some lady elves then start walking around the ship and undressing everyone, and even take away Brother Elf's knife from her. They begin joining hands as a sky hole opens before them, but Galadriel has a flashback of her brother's boat lesson, and this cringeful memory makes her do her best Natalie Wood impression. Some of you may have to look up that reference, while others might know it but think the joke is inappropriate or dated. But do you know what isn't dated? A Rings of Power fan.
Oh, what a loser! Good.
Now, rather than the voluntary nirvana she had on the table, she finds herself facing terrible survival odds as she is out in the middle of one of the largest bodies of water in the world, with pretty much no hope of finding land or vessel. She swims for hours, possibly even days, and finds a vessel. And wouldn't you know it, she even finds Sauron in disguise on this very raft. I mean, what are the odds? Seriously, what are they? Those aboard the wreckage are very suspicious of the elf, but immediately trusting when they see what they think is a ship out in the distance. It turns out to be what's left of their boat, and it's being towed by a sea monster. I wasn't aware that AAA existed in medieval times, but it is impressive to see such a creative solution to overseas pickup. Only Sauron and Galadriel survive the encounter, and he introduces himself to her as Halbrand. And if she were of the clever sort, she might have noticed that his name was just a melding of the words hallmark and branding. The moniker is sort of like an alloy, one might say, which serves as a clue to him having marked Brother Elf. The two bicker a bit, him questioning why she pulled a Heaven Can Wait, and her wondering why he'd cut bait from this bag of eye candy. He reveals his home in the Southlands was taken from him by orcs, and suddenly she's very sympathetic to the put-upon pyromaniac. Though, of course, her primary angle is that it's an opportunity for her to hunt down Sauron. If only she knew the gods had gift-wrapped her foe on a platter made of Cuban life raft, she might have a smile on her face. Though perhaps it's best she didn't. Hurricane Contrivance comes rolling in and knocks no-knockers into the water, but Halbrand dives into the raging sea to save the raging seaward. Exhausted, they fall asleep and the storm carries their raft into a soft collision with another passing vessel. When she awakens, both her and Halbrand are aboard the schooner and it contains a higher percentage of men than a Nick Fuentes fantasy. They sail to the land of Numenor, and after docking, the Lady Elf gets more stares and sideways glances than Mel Gibson in a synagogue. She is taken before Queen Regent Muriel and informs the ruler that the ship's captain delivered her and Halbrand from certain death, and asks that the courtesy be extended to granting them safe passage to Middle-earth. After all, Numenor's ancestors were gifted the island because of the elves, so surely they can spare a bit of wood.
Wood.
Well, old Muriel don't take too kindly to those words, spitting back that her people earned Numenor with the blood they spilled on the battlefield against Morgoth. And then Galadriel, in a brilliant display of her people skills, says she's leaving one way or another even if blood is still the payment. Which doesn't make a lot of sense because that's not even what the Queen said. Tired of these bitches bickering, Halbrand suggests that he and Galadriel stay for a few days while the Queen and her advisors weigh their request, which is agreed to on the condition that the elf remains restricted to the palace grounds. Unhappy with the arrangement, Galadriel finally cools down after Halbrand returns Brother Elf's blade to her, which had been in possession of the ship's captain Elendil. Later, she does her best Altair impression, and suddenly everyone who noticed an elf woman before is giving her the John Cena treatment because she covers her ears.
Well, what'd you think? You're a master of disguise?
Never mind that when she was getting piers on the pier, her ears were covered then, too. She eyeballs the docks with a mind to pull a Jacqueline Sparrow, but Elendil is waiting for her, as he has been tasked with making sure she causes no more disturbances. Upon telling her this, Galadriel responds to the man who saved her life that she wishes he had never brought her here, and then proceeds to threaten him with a blade to the gut.
The angry elf.
Now, I know the citizenry is a bit uppity, and you're feeling more out of place than a Caucasian at a Chinese spelling bee. But the rent is free, and it still seems a better alternative than being stranded with the Dark Lord on a dingy dinghy. All the same, Elendil convinces her to stay by offering to take her to Numenor's Hall of Lore, though he warns her it is about a quarter-day's ride.
Did you say ride?
What in the name of Catherine the Great is that face? Forget the spirit of Sauron or the Cimarron. Galadriel's been possessed by the specter of Tim Walls. As our thoroughbred enthusiast thoroughly searches through scrolls at the Hall of Lore, she comes across one with the same sigil carved upon Brother Elf and the anvil in the northern fortress. Turns out it isn't a sigil at all, but rather a map of the Southlands. That's right. After defeating a guy dogging him for decades, Sauron celebrated the win by cutting a map onto his peck. And then he carved the same map thousands of miles away onto an anvil.
Not a great plan.
Here's an idea. If you are worried about your minions getting lost in Lothlorien or off track in Orthanc, brand their hands Fight Club style with the same symbol. This is the Dark Lord of all that is evil. He's supposed to be cruel and cunning, and this idea never crossed his mind.
What, are you retarded?
The scroll also says that there is a plan in the event of Morgoth's defeat which will turn the Southlands into a realm belonging to his successor and to his armies. Galadriel leaves with this information and finds Halbrand to show it to him, though he is locked in a cell for a back-alley brawl in which he took on and beat down several blacksmiths, and all after he stole from them. She also brings with her another parchment with another symbol carved on it, that being the symbol of the King of the Southlands, which matches the one carved on his neckwear. Despite the fact that he claimed to have taken the item off of a dead man, she believes him to be the lost heir and asks he come with her to reclaim his country and for them to redeem their bloodlines. Somewhat funny that she would say her bloodline would need redeeming and not her. Sort of seems like a passive-aggressive way of laying some blame on her brother, but I digress. Halbrand tells her she is short an army, but she insists that is about to change. And while the citizens of Numenor chant about elf lovers and Galadriel stealing their jobs, she goes before the queen asking to borrow some manpower.
You don't mind a bit of manpower, do you, Doris?
Oh, dirty bastard!
You cheeky fuck!
Queen Muriel is vexed, saying she welcomed her to their country and was repaid with Galadriel riding off to the countryside.
Did you say ride?
Riding off to the countryside, stealing their scrolls while her companion assaulted her countrymen. Galadriel says he is understandably quick-tempered as he is the rightful king of the Southlands and his people are now scattered and divided. Queen Muriel refuses her request and Galadriel says if that's so, she'll just go over her head and speak with her father, the king. You do know your elf pal isn't here to springboard you this time, yes? So good luck getting over anyone's head. The queen warns that she is crossing a line, and then we get this famous exchange.
What authority do you speak, elf? That of your people? Or are you a castaway, grasping for a handhold in a tempest?
I too can command the wind, sir! I have a hurricane in me that will strip Spain bare if you dare to try me!
Sorry.
Or are you a castaway, grasping for a handhold in a tempest?
There's a tempest in me!
Angry elf.
Galadriel is thrown into prison for shoddy line delivery, and I hope the writer was nailed to a wall like Luther's 95 Theses. Halbrand, occupying the adjacent cell, suggests figuring out that which the queen fears most and giving her a means to master it. They figure Queen Muriel's greatest fear involves her father, and no, I'm not making the overused, albeit ever reliable, gas station joke. As they're speaking, the queen's advisor enters with some men telling her that it has been decided that Galadriel will be sent back to her people that night under armed escort. She, however, breaks free from the soldiers, and you have to wonder how they got her into the cell in the first place. She makes her way to Muriel's father and discovers he is bedridden and mumbling only slightly more coherently than Joe Biden at his last debate. But it turns out the thing the queen fears isn't Daddy dying or the final seconds of that fast-ticking biological clock of hers, but rather the visions she's having whenever she gazes into her own personal Palantir, which shows that the coming of Galadriel will bring her world to ruin.
I could relate.
In other words, she saw the Season 2 trailer early. The Lady Elf, however, suggests that to avoid this fate, Numenor must revert back to the old ways and help her and the as-yet-to-be-revealed Sauron retake the Southlands. But like Alaqua Cox's Echo casting call, it falls upon deaf ears. The following day, the queen watches as Galadriel is shipped away, but as she goes back to her keep, the white tree starts weeping leaves and she takes this as a sign that maybe the elf was right. Galadriel is brought back ashore, and now there is unrest among the citizens over the warmongering elf.
Warmongering?
Halbrand, meanwhile, has apparently been released from prison and is working the forge, but is none too happy when he learns that Galadriel went behind his back to suggest he desires to be king rather than honoring his wish to stay in Numenor. And not only that, she tries to make him think that it was his idea all along to use her to regain the crown. You can imagine that goes over about as well as Ezra Miller at in society in general. Next, she finds herself instructing 4 guys and a girl on how to stab and twist in her gut, and rather than having to pay double for that kind of action, the first to get it on her skin gets a promotion. Later, Elendil's son Isildur goes Admiral Akbar on a boat, and Galadriel pounces on the opportunity immediately, claiming this was clearly an attempt to kindle the queen's doubts about going to war. Her advisor disagrees and says they've acted in haste and reasonably suggests that they should win more hearts to the cause so as not to drag the kingdom into battle. By the way, this guy has thus far been presented as a villain. You'd think he were telling the queen to stop funding Ukraine. She ultimately decides that they'll decide in the morning and advises Galadriel to see that Halbrand attends. Guess it was too much to ask someone to fetch him now to get this out of the way. Galadriel visits him at the forge immediately after, apologizes for using him, but of course is only doing so to get him to agree to the meeting, and with her claim they should go to war. He says it wasn't so long ago that men like him were fighting alongside her enemy, even telling her that if she or anyone else knew what he had done to survive, he'd be cast out. Ignoring these clues about his identity, Galadriel's response is to echo to Halbrand that to find the light, one must first touch the darkness. Never mind that that's like saying you need to eat a turd before you can appreciate a steak dinner. He then finds out she lost her brother, but she denies she's after vengeance, while at the same time admitting that she cannot stop killing. He tells her he is sorry about her brother and all she has been through. And at this point, if Halbrand being Sauron were any more transparent, Amandla Stenberg would wear it on the red carpet. After insisting that neither she nor him would find any peace until they've wiped out the orcs and retaken the Southlands, she leaves him to ponder his decision. Then, in one of the more laughable fake-outs I've ever seen, Halbrand is summoned and immediately puts down the king's symbol he wears, making you think for a moment he is going to turn the elf winch down. And then he picks it right back up again. No meeting, by the way. That's enough for the queen to commit her resources to Galadriel's cause, making the whole exploding boat thing an utterly moot point. They all board the ships to head off, and the men watch in awe as Galadriel walks on deck, which I'm guessing is the showrunner's way of trying to convince his wife that you don't have to be big to inspire confidence. Later, as the ship nears land, Isildur awakens early in the morning to feed a bite of apple to his horse, take a couple himself, and then toss the fruit into the sea UAE style.
What a waste. What a waste.
He's met by Galadriel, who then starts bragging about her eyesight before instructing him on the value of humility. Yes, those two lines of dialogue literally are side by side. Just after, she learns he is the son of the captain and says he looks just like his father. Personally, I think they have about as much family resemblance as, well, these two.
I was always told I looked more like my mother.
That I can believe. Queen Muriel asks how long before they make anchor, and Elendil answers that it is a full day's sail into the mountains, and from there, another day's ride east into the Vale.
Did you say ride?
Stop that. Now, as all of this has been going on, there has obviously been a lot happening in the rest of the show with several characters, and here some of their stories will collide. So, I will endeavor to sum up briefly who they are and what's been going on. The elves had been occupying the Southlands since the defeat of Morgoth, as humans in those parts had aligned with him during the war. These same elves were called home when the High King declared the days of peace had begun right around the time he sent Galadriel off to Valinor. One of them is named Arondir, and he has the hots for a local nurse and single mother named Bronwyn, mother to a young lad named Theo. Theo discovered a sword hilt in episode 1 with the same map carved into it which Galadriel had been chasing, and it's apparently very important and full of spooky powers. The object is basically like the One Ring in that it tempts with power and cannot be destroyed. The elf was captured and enslaved by this guy, who leads a group of orcs who re-emerged from underneath the earth as soon as the elves were called home. Some of the Southlanders swear fealty to Adar, some remain loyal, and now the two sides have begun fighting one another. The bad guys look to have won, and Adar threatens to kill Bronwyn, and to stop him, Theo gives up the sword. Now, in case you are at all curious about the finer details about how all of this occurred and are the least bit tempted to see for yourself how it all came to be, let me clarify that the execution is about as smooth as that of Ethel Rosenberg, though significantly less shocking. Galadriel and the Númenóreans come riding into battle.
Did you say ride?
Be quiet!
And they waste little time showing her mounted skills. Remember when this scene was considered a bit silly?
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Galadriel runs into Arondir and is warned not to let Adar escape with the sword hilt. She gives chase, but then Halbrand, who has caught up with them, stops Adar and makes to kill him before being halted by Galadriel, who needs the enemy alive. She interrogates him and figures him to be one of the elves of old who was taken by Morgoth, tortured and twisted into becoming the first orcs. When he scoffs at her demands to know the location of Sauron, she threatens his photosensitive friends with a suntan. His response is to tell her that following the defeat of Morgoth, Sauron wished to heal the world by crafting a power over the flesh, but these secrets evaded him. In pursuit of this goal, many of Adar's children were sacrificed, and once he'd had enough, he killed the Dark Lord himself. Then, as my own mother once said to me, Galadriel tells him he's a mistake. Then she vows to eradicate every last orc and keep him alive until that day so she can whisper in his ear that all of his offspring are dead. He rather correctly points out that she's been corrupted by darkness, and she says maybe she should start by killing him. You could watch any movie from the Fast and Furious franchise and not find a 180 that sudden. After stopping Galadriel from murdering an unarmed prisoner, Halbrand basically gets a hall pass for any past deeds he might have been a part of, and then the Queen calls for him and he is hailed as the new king of the Southlands. Galadriel, meanwhile, returns the broken sword to Arondir, or at least she thought she did. Turns out that Adar gave it to one of his followers and that it's a key that opens the literal floodgates. And when those waters flow into the dormant volcano, it blows faster than Kamala Harris seeking her next promotion.
Do not come. Do not come.
And as fire and chaos surround our elvish heroine, a deadly current of heat, gas, ash, and rock heads straight towards her. But she stands still and, again like Miss Harris, takes it full in the face. Of course, the Númenóreans crafted her a full suit of plot armor, enchanted with a death-by-fire allergy, because despite waking up covered in more ash than a Poképhile's browsing history, she is otherwise unharmed. Finding Theo alive, they go outside of the village to find the Númenórean camp. They share a few dull conversations. She claims the defeat is her fault. No argument here. And then when asked about who she's lost to the orcs, she mentions her brother, but also her husband, Celeborn. That's right, we've spent hours with this woman, and after all of this talk of taking up her brother's task and all she has lost, this poor guy has gotten fewer mentions than Destiny in his wife's DMs. This little heart-to-heart is then interrupted by passing orcs.
What is it? What do you smell?
Well, it cannot be man-flesh this time, so silver clam, perhaps? The orcs pass without incident, and the elf and the lad ultimately arrive at the camp where Theo is reunited with his mother. Galadriel, meanwhile, finds Elendil and Queen Muriel, with the former feeling bitter because he thinks his son died and that the fault lies with the elf. The Queen, meanwhile, was blinded by the unnatural disaster, and while the elf is remorseful for leading her people into this fight, Muriel tells her to only feel pity for those who aligned against them because the Númenóreans will be coming back and in force. This gets Elendil all weepy, but I'm more pondering why Galadriel is so mournful over the humans after she's led who knows how many elves to their own deaths. As the Queen and her men head home, Galadriel stands with Arondir and says she'll report back to the High King. The also present Bronwyn asks what about their king, which surprises the elf because she thought Halbrand had died. Maybe next time search for him a little bit more thoroughly than OJ did for the real killer. Indeed, her friend is alive, though badly wounded, and Galadriel says he requires elvish medicine. He says this is not over, and he will not abandon these people and condemn the lands to burn. The two of them pass through the Southlanders, who chant strength to the king, and off they ride.
Did you say ride?
Shut up!
Oh, and speaking of those ruined lands, they are now called Mordor. That's right. Mordor was created in the same manner in which one solves a puzzle in the Uncharted games. And now to catch some things up a bit further, as we have more stories colliding. Since Galadriel left Lindon, her friend Elrond has been working with the elven smith Celebrimbor on a arts and crafts project at the behest of the king. Their lands and people are in danger of dying from tree COVID, and they'd hope to deal with the dwarves to obtain mithril because apparently mithril contains elf essence.
This sounds very gay.
Anyway, the deal fell through despite Elrond's suspiciously close friendship with the dwarven prince.
Give me the meat, and give it to me raw.
Oh! Gay. Gay, so gay.
Gay. Extraordinarily gay. Steeped in gayness.
So, aside from a small piece Elrond was given, they have none of the mineral available to them. So when Galadriel and Halbrand arrive in Eregion, Elrond is stunned to see her, but wasting no time, she tells him of Halbrand's lineage, and he takes her aside to discuss what's happening to their people and home. He even apologizes for sending her away, and she gives him wisdom straight from the reels of Finding Nemo.
What are we to do?
The only thing we can do. Swim.
Something's wrong with you. Really.
Halbrand heals up and finds his way into Celebrimbor's forge and soon begins to inquire about some of the rather precious stones, wondering what will be done with them. Celebrimbor says he had hoped to use them to capture the essence of Middle-earth, but the little bit of mithril in their possession isn't enough for what they'd hoped to accomplish. Halbrand asks if he is considered an alloy, suggesting the right ore could amplify the properties of the stones, and it would seem this has never occurred to the elf. World's greatest blacksmith, gourds and gals. The elves and their king meet where the smith talks of crafting a crown with the powers they had discussed harnessing, but the king is highly reluctant to place that much power on the head of one, including himself. But more pressing is their apparent lack of time, as the eruption of Mount Doom has accelerated the corruption which is destroying their home. Celebrimbor offhandedly lets out that Halbrand played a part in this idea, even echoing Adar's line about Sauron seeking power over the flesh, and finally, Galadriel starts to become suspicious. The king ultimately grants them 3 months to complete the task, while Galadriel sends out for information on the lineage of the Southland kings. Halbrand and her speak, and he thanks her for saving his life and for believing in him. He won't forget that, nor will he let anyone else. A bit of an explosion rocks the forge, and Galadriel goes to investigate, finding that their attempts to force the mithril to alloy with a lesser ore are failing. She suggests that they've been pushing themselves too hard, and Halbrand has an epiphany, stating that perhaps they need to coax the metals into joining rather than pushing them too hard. As Halbrand's light bulb is going off, Galadriel's messenger returns to her with the scroll she had requested, and the man notices. We see next her holding it unfurled by her side and appearing upset. Halbrand goes to her and says that instead of a crown they will be crafting 2 smaller objects, and that she should come and see. She demands, however, that he tell her who he is, that she knows the last person to hold that royal symbol died 1,000 years ago and without an heir. They go back and forth, with Halbrand showing her how she saved him, how it was her idea to bring him across the sea when he wanted to remain in Numenor, and how together they defeated her enemy and his. And honestly, there isn't a single lie or twisted word in this sentence. He is 100% correct. She again asks for his name, he says he's had many, and finally realizing his identity, she moves to attack him, but is easily stopped. Sauron transports her into a memory of her brother where she's told to touch the darkness once more. Seems a bit like the kind of thing Bill Cosby said when he'd send women off to Dreamland. She then finds herself back on the raft with Halbrand, and he calls her his friend. Galadriel reminds him that he was also a friend to Morgoth. But he says when Morgoth was defeated, he felt the light of the One again, and he knew that if he was to be forgiven, he had to help heal all that he had helped fall to ruin. Sounds like the makings of a redemption arc to me. She rejects this, saying no penance could undo all he did, even though she told him that whatever he had done before, he could be free of it now.
She's a liar.
He proposes to make her his queen, and with her at his side, he could be bound to the light and her to power, and that they could save Middle-earth together.
For it is together that we prevail!
She refuses, but he says she needs him, reminding her that her people cast her out for asking for a few soldiers.
What will they do when you tell them that you are my ally? When you tell them that Sauron lives because of you!
And you will die because of me!
Elrond awakens her, though she does not know for certain if she's still hallucinating, though her fears are overcome after she asks him about their first meeting, and he recalls correctly. Of course, Sauron was just inside of her mind, so why she'd believe he couldn't find the answer to that question and go on tricking her is something only the retards writing this show would know. Elrond wonders where Halbrand went, and she says he's gone and they are never to treat with him again, though she keeps hidden the fact that he's actually the Dark Lord. She even manipulates Elrond into not questioning her reasons for guarding this secret by reminding him that he regretted sending her away, all to save her own backside. Celebrimbor asks if their work should proceed as planned, but she suggests that rather than 2 rings, there should be 3. No more, no less. 3 shall be the number they shall make, and the number they make shall be 3. 4 shalt they not make, nor they make thou 2, excepting that they then proceed to 3. 5 is right out. Once the number 3, being the third ring, be reached, then balance shall be had.
Amen.
Amen.
Celebrimbor says he requires for the alloy other metals of the most exquisite quality, and Galadriel just so happens to carry an object made of silver and gold from Valinor. Thus, Finrod's knife is melted down to forge
3 elven rings.
Oh, and look, the melted blade takes the form of a memberberry. And as we see Sauron arriving at the newly formed Mordor, the season ends. As some of you may know, I covered the first 2 episodes at length, and in those 2 videos I went over in finer detail all of the half-baked hoops and logical loopholes the writers took to make this event and that take place, and I can assure you, as abridged as this coverage of the season as a whole was, the same problems persist for all 8 episodes. However, I think no arc better exemplifies Amazon's absurdity than that of its main character. Galadriel is, without question, one of the most despicable individuals I have ever been asked to root for. She has no complexity and little redeeming value, and while the showrunners probably think they're cleverly manipulating the audience into being sympathetic with Sauron, what they've done in reality is just create a far better alternative. And notice that up to this point, I have barely mentioned the lore of J.R.R. Tolkien or the films of Peter Jackson. I have almost entirely engaged on the terms of the show and its version of events, despite the fact that they spit on the works the professor so carefully wove into his canon.
First thing to specify is that there's no such thing really as canon in Tolkien. Tolkien's ideas were ever evolved.
Shut the fuck up, fat man. This ain't none of your business.
Speaking of canon, my suggestion to this fool is that he put his face in front of one while I light the fuse. I have played your game, Amazon, and nobody with half a functioning prefrontal cortex wins with this gourd-awful adaptation. It deserves nothing less than to be cast back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. Gourds and gals, I do have a strong belief that generally one should not be ridiculed for liking a piece of art. The simple emotion of enjoyment is difficult to control and not inherently a statement of quality. But as always, when one says generally, you should expect there to be exceptions, and Rings of Power represents such an exception. If you even so much as like it, your taste is questionable at best, as is your understanding of writing, structure, character, and even morality. You need to raise your standards, and you need to consider the implications of what this program celebrates as good and virtuous. It is such a blight on entertainment that even Faramir doesn't rank as low on Denethor's list for lowest quality. And now I have the recently finished Season 2 to look forward to, so yay for that. As for when I cover it, that will largely depend on you, the viewer. If you want such a video for Season 2, or even would like to see me cover the arcs of the Harfoots or the Southlanders, let me know in the comments below. Now, smash the buttons, sub to the kingdom, and as always, thank you for your time. I will see you again soon. God bless, and Gourdspeed.